Wilson is forced to stay at home for a while, but not before a good week of hanging out at some new places and meeting some new faces. Hey there, it's Joe and Wilson, and welcome back to another episode of Wilson the VW Bus, the podcast about my adventures in my 1967 VW camper bus named Wilson. We are currently locked up at home, unable to get out of my driveway, and it's not because of any mechanical issues with the bus. You see, the water company has decided to rip up all the streets in my neighborhood and to repave them, which is awesome and so desperately needed. They dug up the road and my front lawn last year to install new water mains, and the quick repairs that they left made the roads almost undrivable for the past year. So there are so many potholes and sinkholes, bumps and dips. It's been like driving off-road for almost a year. And the problem is that now that they have started and the final repairs are being done and they've ripped up all the asphalt, I can't get Wilson out of my driveway. All the elevation changes in the pavement and raised manholes are too high for my little minuscule 2.5-inch ground clearance. So I'm currently grounded. It's now Friday, and I'm hoping to be able to get out sometime next week and cruise down the smoothest roads ever. So recently, my friend Marina's girlfriend, Corinne, posted something on Instagram. She usually posts some funny stuff all the time. I mean, she's just a comedian there. But she had posted an Instagram reel stating that car guys were the equivalent of horse girls. So I'm not sure if I got the reference totally, but I think it was just making fun of people who were into cars, and I guess those people were also into horses. But it got me thinking. And I wasn't necessarily offended by the joke, but it made me think about my passion, my hobby, my lifestyle, and why for me it's cars and, say, maybe not sports. So, you see, I am just not into mainstream sports at all. I do not follow any professional sport. Not football, nor baseball, or basketball, or soccer. I only watch the Super Bowl for the funny commercials. And to be completely honest, I might have a slight bias towards people who do revolve their lives around professional sports. It's simply, I believe, that there's just so much more to life than to vicariously watch someone play a child's game. I mean, in essence, we are talking about running, chasing, throwing and kicking, catching a ball, right? I mean, for most of them. And think about it. Imagine if all the trillions of dollars spent each year around the world on professional athletes and arenas, advertising, apparel. Imagine if all that effort and money was poured into something really worthwhile, like, I don't know, like a cure for cancer or clean energy or anything other than grown adults chasing rubber balls. I don't know. I also subscribe to the theory that our addiction to sports is encouraged by our governments, who also do subsidize arenas, by the way. And in the same way they used to hold gladiator games in the Colosseum in ancient Rome. Why? To keep the commoners drunk and happy and not paying attention to what's really going on. Oh my God, am I going political in this thing? I hope not. Anyway, I may have posted something similar to what Corinne said, in her post, stating that maybe people who follow professional sports might be simple-minded as well. I don't know. If anybody finds this digression offensive, I do apologize, but keep listening. It hopefully gets better. So why is my passion around vehicles different from the passion others may have for, say, organized sports? About a day or two later, after I saw Corinne's post, I read this question posted online. It said, "Why are you so obsessed about cars?" And the answer was given that it's not always about the cars. It's about the lifestyle. It's about the experience of driving, the feeling of freedom, the people, forming new friendships, meeting others with the same passion. No matter how low, how high, how fast, slow, or quiet your car is, all builds are respected in the community. Now, I guess you could apply that same resolution to fans of the same sport team, couldn't you? Saying that they all have a common bond there. So does that make me any different from the fan of a professional sport? Maybe so, maybe not. But I like to spend my free time going out to meet people in the community and to talk to them face to face. to hear their stories and to tell them my stories, all about cars. And at this time in my life, it's mostly about our friend, Wilson the VW Bus. So now that I've gone down that rabbit hole there, let me bring you back to what I've been up to for the past week or two. Now that my home repairs are all caught up and the summer is halfway over, I want to get back to the cruise nights and the car shows that I've been missing out on. I started by attending the Metuchen Main Street Cruise Night, which I had attended previously, but the last time I went there, it was too late, or I got there too late, and I couldn't get into the show. I had to park down the road. So this time, I left super early and was able to score the very first spot on Main Street. My wife, my son, his wife, my daughter, my granddaughter, everyone except for my son-in-law, Connor, they were all able to make it down to the show and hang out with me and Wilson too, which was awesome. I met a guy who parked across the street with his 79 Porsche 911 SC. That was a Japanese import that he imported via the UK. I think he was from the UK too. He had the nice English accent. I mean, I was truly impressed with this car. He came across the street to snap up some photos of both Wilson and the Porsche together, and I did too. I posted some on my Instagram, I think. Maybe Facebook, I don't know. Nice looking car, really cool. And he was trying to keep the whole German car vibe thing going. Later that evening, after a bunch of folks poked their heads into Wilson and his inviting interior to check it out and talk VWs with me, I ran into an old-timer named Joe and his buddy John. They had parked a few cars ahead of me with John's Buick Riviera that they brought to the show. Now, Joe is in his 90s, and after talking to him about the different cars that we saw at the Metuchen show that night for a while, he told me about his collection of 1920s and 30s hot rods, some of which he has had since, I believe, like the 1950s or 60s. Now, this guy is a true old-school classic hot rodder, and he was so nice to talk to. I told him I would love to have seen one of his own cars at the show, and then he and John invited me to a cruise night that they hold every Friday at the Blue Star in Watchung. That's not too far. It's maybe 20 minutes in the other direction. Well, that was only 2 days away, so I told him I would be there, no problem. So I ran up to the Blue Star meet on that Friday, and just a little early again to be safe. I didn't know what the crowd was going to be like. And I was greeted by a young man who ran up to me as soon as I pulled in the lot. And the first thing he says was, "Hey, glad you can make it. We don't get many VW buses here. And there was a guy that was just here in a VW Bug, but I think he's coming back soon." So I soon realized that this was Joe's grandson when I explained to him that I was invited by Joe and John. He's like, "Oh, it's my grandpop." And so this guy runs the event, and he and his friends were very welcoming. Joe and John did eventually come to the show, and Joe had his 29 Ford pickup that he had hot rodded back in the 50s. It has like a LaSalle transmission, a 3-speed. Really, it was just a cool ride. It was an awesome shape, and the wealth of information that this man has with old cars is extensive. It's so nice to see his car and to pick his brain for a while. A few minutes after I talked to Joe, that 68 blue VW Bug did come back to the show. He said that he saw me when he was driving away, and he turned around and followed me back in. And then he parked right next to me. So my new friend, Alex, who, a.k.a. Luca Moan 2020 on the old Instagram, he also owns a cool blue 79 bay window bus. We talked all night, exchanged a lot of information, and I told him about some of the good experiences I had rebuilding Wilson, some of the bad, some of the things that I had been going through, and I introduced him to some of the vendors like no longer available VW parts over in the UK. He messaged me a few days later to say that Wilson had inspired him to get his fuel-injected VW bus on the road again, and I can't wait to see that. We also both met for the first time a guy named Vinny, who was a local doctor, and his beautifully restored 65 VW Bug. Vinny was happy to let us check out the quality of his own restoration on his Bug, and he gave both of us some VW literature too. So I will definitely be back to the Watchung Blue Star as soon as I can get out of the driveway again. Well, now that I was on a roll, getting out to a show every other day with Wilson, I headed back to Metuchen for a car show that Sunday. This one was a paid show with donations going to the rescue squad. Good cause there. So people came from all over the state. There were many cars and bikes that I had never seen before, and that's always a good thing. I luckily parked under a nice shade tree with Wilson, and more than a few people remarked that I had probably the best spot in the show, and I thought so too. I made sure that my vintage Coca-Cola cooler was stocked with soft drinks and some leftover pizza, and again, I talked to the community for hours. I gave out my very last Wilson sticker. I have a little Wilson VW bus stickers that I give out to the kids, so I gave one out to a little girl who was enjoying Wilson, so I had to order some new stickers from Sticker Mule. As of this recording, they still haven't arrived, but I did just contact them, and they said there was a glitch in their system, and they apologized, but they'd rush them out right away. As things were wrapping up and the trophies were being handed out, I was completely surprised to hear my name being called, because I almost never register for any shows or cruise nights. I feel that I get plenty of attention with Wilson, and honestly, I'm not really into the collection of the trophies anymore. So, besides, if the car next to me has like thousands of dollars tied up into paint and bodywork, and Wilson, with his crusty patina and his dents and dings, gets a trophy over that other car, that other car owner may take offense and complain, or even worse, he may not come back to that event in the future, and I don't want to be the reason for that to happen. Anyway, the event sponsors for the Metuchen First Aid Squad chose me for the very last trophy on that day. So maybe it was because of the conversation we had about converting one of their old ambulances into a cool camper bus, or maybe they just dig the old VW vibe. Who knows? Anyway, thanks to the people of Metuchen for all of the recent love. 3 days later, the Woodbridge Downtown Main Street Cruise Night was scheduled, and I was really hoping to be able to make it, as it was the last event for the year. They only hold these downtown cruise nights in Woodbridge once in June, once in July, and once in August. And all of Main Street in Woodbridge gets closed down to accommodate the cars and all the people. Now, if you remember, my street was scheduled to have been completely ripped up by this point, so I didn't think I was going to go. But luckily, the paving crew did not get to my house yet, so I was able to sneak out of the driveway and off to the show. The rain, however, started coming down as soon as I left home, and it continued for about 40 minutes or so, but that did not deter the cars nor the crowd. It was a packed show when the sun finally came down, so everyone simply wiped off the water spots, and we all had a blast. My friends Leon and Sherry from Carpet Maven on Main Street, they host the event. And for the past few shows, they've asked me to be a judge for the selection of the car show trophies. I'm always honored and do my very best to pick out some of the nicest rides. I'd say recently I've been picking mostly muscle cars, but there are a lot of nice cars at this show. It's a lot of fun, and people always come up and say, hey, you're using the bus, because, at this time, my family again met up with me and we all had dinner inside Wilson. And, I've always replied, yeah, it's my daily driver all summer now that I've sold the Camaro. So I met a few more VW folks and received some invitations to a couple more upcoming shows for this fall, and I can't wait for those. I think that this about wraps it up for the Chronicles of Wilson the VW Bus for this episode. I want to, again, thank you all for listening, and feel free to leave me some feedback or comment, or check me out on the Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. I will catch you all next time.